You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Leaving Young Earth Creationism with Vishanti. Vishanti, how are you today?
I'm awake for once on a Saturday morning, so I do all right.
Well, thank you for waking up and hanging out on what is normally supposed to be a restful day, but now I'm gonna harass you about coming on YouTube. So sorry to ruin your Saturday there.
Nah, it's good.
Okay. So for those of you guys who don't know, who might be watching, I'm the Dabber Dinosaur. If you don't know who I am, I have no clue how you got here, but welcome. Assuming that you do know, but maybe you're not super familiar with this show, on this show, I interview people about their exit from young Earth creationism. It is not necessarily an exit from religion as a whole or Christianity, although many of my guests do talk about that, and that's cool too. However, the focus is primarily on the pseudoscience aspect, and, that is the goal is to get at what changed one's mind about the scientific claims. And of course, like I said, that still often goes into wider questions about faith. So I'm sure that we'll probably touch on that too. And for the most part, this is going to be Vishanti's show, not my show. And Vishanti, is there anything you wanted to say to introduce yourself before we get into the actual interview?
I don't know how I should introduce myself to the YouTube audience because I think a lot of them are already familiar with me.
That's true.
I started out just commenting in random side chats for science debunkers and ended up kind of joining some channels along the way, so here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you, and I'm going to put it on solo mode for you so that everyone can stop seeing my weird dinosaur move around.
Ow!
Yep.
Duo mode.
No, we're going solo.
No, I insist.
All right, but we're going to go to the bigger mode. Yeah. Now everyone can see all your open pores. That's not true. Your webcam isn't nearly high definition for that. All right.
I don't feel like flipping it off standard mode.
Well, quite frankly, you're probably not big enough on the screen for it to matter much, so I wouldn't bother either.
That's fine, I suppose.
All right. So, we always start out with the same basic question. How old were you when you became a young Earth creationist? And if that was just how you were raised and you don't remember a time before that, then we can talk about that. So,
I remember being in a youth group in like late middle school, early high school age. So I would say that's about 8th, 9th grade. How old are students in 8th or 9th grade? Like 15? 14?
I think it's like 14 or 15, but it's been a few million years, so I don't really remember very well.
Okay, so it was about that age, and I remember growing up being very into dinosaurs. I actually told my kindergarten teacher that I wanted to be a paleontologist when I grew up. So when I was 4 years old, starting kindergarten, I was rattling off names like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus and Archaeopteryx to my kindergarten teacher.
Nice.
So I really liked dinosaurs, and it always blew my mind to think about stuff like deep time, even though it wasn't called that yet. So I was getting to that point in my life where I was establishing kind of my identity and the things that I wanted to think about myself and how I wanted to kind of function in the world. Teens, preteens, those good years. And the youth pastor at the church where I was going brought the whole Kent Hovind seminar, and we watched I think we started out with the Hovind theory, and then he showed some other ones various times.
Man.
And I was like, oh man, this is great. This is the perfect way for me to harmonize my love of dinosaurs, with the Bible. So I took it and ran with it. I remember buying the whole DVD set, going on his website. And that was like my big deal. And I was passing it around school and telling everybody. And my high school biology teacher was not a fan. And
I can imagine.
She was actually very displeased when I found a young earth creationism type of like booklet on her shelf. I think somebody in a previous grade had probably snuck that in there. And I found it by accident. I was like, "Oh, look. Can we talk about this?" She was like, "No, get it out of here. I don't want it."
Okay.
Awkward.
Yeah, so I have a question. So this was something that came up because your youth pastor brought it up, but you had already managed to get into your teenage years before that. So was that just not
Mhm.
something that had really been talked about at church before?
They didn't talk about it. Like, the church where I grew up was very tiny, non-denominational. There's 2 different types of Church of God.
Mhm.
There's the Pentecostal one, and there's the non-Pentecostal one, and the non-Pentecostal one is the one that I happen to grow up in.
Okay.
So, we always used to hear people kinda dunking on the Pentecostals down the road because they would run on chairs and speak in tongues, and I found out later they did not actually run on chairs, but they did occasionally speak in tongues.
Yeah, I've never actually heard of Pentecostals running on chairs, really. But speaking in tongues is it's sort of like if you're not doing that, then can you really call yourself a Pentecostal?
Exactly. I mean, and there's the Pentecostals who think that you're not even baptized in the Holy Spirit unless you're speaking in tongues. So,
Yeah, that's gonna leave out a whole lot of people who really think they're Christian come the resurrection, huh?
well, if there's one thing Christians like doing, it's disqualifying other Christians from being Christian.
Yeah, that is it's a prevalent thread in a lot of strains of Christianity. It's true. Um, okay, so this actually answered the next question, which is basically how you became one. So, so you said that you were watching a lot of Kent Hovind videos, and you actually purchased some yourself.
I purchased the whole set.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I think right now he's selling them for $50. Was it still $50 back then?
I think the whole set at the time was like 99 if you got the whole thing.
Oh wow, that's
And
a lot.
it was every DVD in the set, and it may or may not have come with a workbook. I can't
I
remember.
hope it at
It's
least
been a
came with
long
his
time.
thousand or so slides that he likes to talk about.
Actually, he used to offer his slides up, and he would be like, "Yeah, if you want to copy my slides so you can do this presentation for other people, I'll send them to you." And he would either put them up on like a CD, data
Mhm.
disk, or like a thumb drive or whatnot.
I think now he
And
sells them as a thumb drive that you can just buy the thumb drive and it comes with his slides
yeah,
on them.
and I have access to his entire slide collection. It's like way too many,
Do you
but
have
that's his
this?
script.
Do you
So
have
he
the
hasn't changed it.
slide that has THOT as a word? Thought.
I'll have to look for it.
Okay,
I
because
probably
that's my
do.
favorite of his slides. Because just randomly right on there, it's got thought, and it's just like, oh goodness, Kent.
Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and players.
Ooh. All right. So, were there other creationists that you were aware of, or whose media consumed that were like relatively prominent, like Ken Ham or anyone
Answers in
from?
Genesis, yeah, they were a big
Okay.
one. I remember there being a sort of unofficial rivalry because obviously Kent, having never changed his arguments, he was getting taken to task by AIG at the time, and they were putting out a blog about like arguments creationists should not use.
I remember that.
And they were specifically saying like, don't use the whole dust on the moon argument.
Mhm.
That's not the dunk you think it is. So I remember him getting pretty salty about that, and me just kind of sitting back eating popcorn, like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I guess AIG's got the PhDs to back up their position. So
Okay.
I
So
did occasionally read their articles, and
as time wore on, would you say that you started to be more influenced by AIG than Kent, or was it still sort of a
it was both.
okay?
I
All
actually
right.
have emailed AIG at one point when I was younger, and just kind of letting them know, like, oh, hey, your articles and whatnot helped me, da da da. So they were very impressed and thankful for that. And now I look back and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that they were um, polite to someone writing in to say thank you. They're less polite though when they feel like you've attacked them and they want to write about that.
Oh yeah, not surprised.
Yeah.
But that's
Um,
because they're a bag of Richards.
that's true. I mean, you can say it, YouTube won't actually do anything if you say a bag of dicks. It's just that if you type it, they'll be all angry about it and censor you.
Well, they are a bag of dicks.
Yeah, it's true. So, all right. Was there any other organizations? Like, did you ever hear about like Karl Baugh or Christian Ministries International?
Yeah, I mean, all these people, the name dropping was like, oh, Karl Baugh has this, book out, or Henry Morris did this thing. So and so has the tracks in Paluxy, and there's a museum
goodness.
they set up there, and
even AIG is now down, like not okay with people using the Paluxy tracks. You're just like, no, guys, there's
it only took them what 25 years or
something
more
like
to
that.
come around to that.
For those of you who in the audience who might not know, the Paluxy tracks are a late Cretaceous trackway, in which there are some probably ornithomimid footprints. There are also, I believe, some sauropod footprints. Well, the thing is that some of the ornithomimid footprints are like before they were fossilized. A lot of the mud collapsed in on the toe impressions, and because the mud was fairly deep, they also left some metatarsal impressions. And so what it looks like is if you're looking at a grainy photo where you're not paying much attention, it kind of looks like a human footprint. And so, oh, and also, Inkboy member for 5 months says, is this drinking stream? I came late. I mean, you're welcome to drink, but I'm not. Well, I'm drinking water. I'm not drinking any alcohol. So, this is certainly not a drinking game stream, but I mean, you're welcome to do what you want in the privacy of your own home. Also, by the way, I do want to point out that we will have a Q&A, and so questions should be held for that. However, if you do super chat a question at any time, it will go to the top of the list, and we will be reading questions in order of first super chats, and then the non-super chatted questions. And then, of course, DM Wing says AIG equals one bag over several eggplant emojis. I'm sure everyone knows what the eggplant emoji is. Actually, a friend of mine actually once asked me like what I was doing. I said, oh, I'm cooking. And then she asked, what are you cooking? So I sent the eggplant emoji. Apparently she forgot that was actually an eggplant. Yeah, she forgot about that. Let's see. All right, so anyway, the Paluxy footprints though, like they're just not human tracks, and there are also a bunch of frauds that have been carved, where people have just carved bad-looking human footprints, and then you'll get people like Karl Baugh or Kent Hovind saying, "Oh, look, it's got all these ridges in it." It's like, yeah, those are chisel marks, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Honestly, for a very long time, longer than I care to admit, I was super into Ron Wyatt because Kent Hovind was like, oh yeah, look at him, he found all these relics, and it just seemed too good to be true, but I was super into it.
Is there anything Ron Wyatt hasn't claimed to find?
Honestly, that's a really good question.
I mean, let's see. He's found the Ark of the Covenant. He's found the true Ark. I'm pretty sure he's found the true cross. He's found Pharaoh's army buried under the Red Sea, or drowned under the Red Sea. I feel like he's found the actual tomb of Jesus, which is, of course, not where the Church of the Sepulchre is. Because that, I mean, look, I have no idea if the Church of the Sepulchre is built anywhere near a reasonable place. But you know that if Ron Wyatt just came back with like, oh no, it's just where the Church of the Sepulchre is, everyone would be like, yawn. He's going to come up with some fantastical story about how he went into the underground tunnels underneath, the Wailing Wall, and then he found an arm's depth tunnel, and then at the other end of the tunnel, he could just barely glimpse the tomb or whatever. Like, he's always got these ridiculous stories like that.
Yeah, and it's like Liz D in the chat says Ron Wyatt found Eve's toenail shavings under his bed. That's about as long and the short of it.
Yeah.
Like, Ron Wyatt's claims are so fantastical, and every time somebody tries to defend him, it's, oh, well, this person that was with him totally saw it. And this person that was with him took photos. And you go, oh, cool, where are the photos? Well, they haven't been released.
Oh, so they don't exist, basically.
Why is that? Well, here's a video of them saying they saw it. That's cool, but where's their evidence?
Yeah, so there's this thing in in archaeology that's also a thing in paleontology. One is, generally speaking, you have to have the physical object that you're describing that has to be available Now there are certain exceptions. For instance, like we're not invalidating the genus Spinosaurus because the Allies blew it up during the bombing of Germany during World War II. Like, yeah, they bombed that museum and those bones don't exist. But like, we're not tossing out the papers for that reason. There's extenuating circumstances there. But for the most part, you need to have the physical thing, and you also need to have what's called provenance, which is like a chain of custody and like an evidence report. So, ideally, when evidence is being collected in a criminal case, right, you write down who has it, where they found it, you get photographs of it in place, and then every person it's transferred to has to actually sign, like, I got it from this guy at this time, this is me authenticating that, and then you have a whole system where, where you got it, who's had it since. Archaeology needs that. And so when you say, I found the Ark of the Covenant, trust me, bro, the only correct response is, where is it, and where's the chain of provenance? And if the answer isn't like, here's the chain, and here's the location where you can see the Ark of the Covenant, then you didn't find the Ark of the Covenant. Sorry. That's just how that works.
But he said he did, and his friends and this doctor said that they did.
But we also know that it's actually in an Ethiopian church somewhere. Which is another story.
The source for that is trust me, bro.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that is in fact the source for that. But it's from a whole lot of people, because also the people of the church say, trust me, bro. And that's way more people than Ron Wyatt has. So eventually enough trust me, bros totally becomes something you should take seriously in archaeology.
Well, and that's like another thing is somebody's been kind of going back and forth with me in some comments about Ron Wyatt, and they're like, here's a video of somebody who's a doctor that said that they were there when he found this thing. And I'm like, that's cute, but
yeah,
where are the measurements of the dig site? Where are the photos? Where's the paper write-ups? Where's the provenance? But he said he saw it. Congratulations. Again, where are the measurements? Where's the sketches of the find? Like, these are standard basic things that you do in archaeology. And if you can't do anything other than I was there, trust me, then you're full of it.
Yep. So actually, it seems like you were unusually plugged into a lot of different sources in young Earth creationism. Most of the people that I've talked to have one or two major sources that they listen to, and then they were only sort of peripherally aware. But it seems like you were pretty well plugged in.
Way too deep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was that still stemming from that sort of like really into things like dinosaurs in the past and whatnot?
I'm a perennial student. I love to learn. Okay. I love to absorb knowledge. I love going on rabbit trails. That's just something I do. And if you start me down a rabbit trail, I'm just going to follow it until it runs out. So, if you give me this conspiracy theory about how they found the for real Ark, trust me, I'm going to go try to dig up as much as I can on it, because I'm like, ooh, this is very esoteric and whatnot. So,
okay.
Yeah, I was following all those little trails.
All right, and we do have a new member, so welcome Ulf Hazelcreek, who joined the channel at the Tetrapod level. By the way, guys, gift memberships are now a thing, and you have to opt in to get them, and if you buy them, they are randomly assigned among the people who are opted in and who most frequently interact with the channel. So that's just a thing that exists. And if you, I don't know. So, okay, what was the first thing that made you start to decide that maybe not all was what you had thought in terms of the truthiness, shall we say, of young Earth creationism?
Well, this happened a lot more recently than most people would assume. And it happened directly as a result of me converting to Judaism.
Okay.
Because young Earth creationism requires biblical literacy, or literalism. Literalism, thank you. My brain just completely shut down there for a second.
There is no reason to believe it other than biblical literalism.
Yeah, it requires a literalist interpretation. And I went all through high school, all through college. I made very good grades in my astronomy class. Like, I made straight A's. I did super good in my labs. I loved science, but I was still going, well, they're just not looking at the evidence right. They're just not, interpreting it correctly. They're just I was making all these excuses.
Mm-hmm.
And when I kind of formalized my conversion, I was suddenly freed from this box of having to take everything literally, and being able to read the text and still glean meaning out of it without having to require that everything literally historically happened. I was just not obligated to believe in a 6-day creation anymore. And converting to Judaism actually liberated me from a lot of really toxic elements that came out of like literalism and young earth creationism and like the fundamentalist kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, because there's so much toxicity bound up in all of that. And it freed me up from a lot of those. So I can read the text and I can go, you know what? This is a mythological origin story, and I still like it. There's still meaning for me. There's still things to study. There's still linguistic quirks that are really cool. And I don't have to believe that this actually happened in 6 literal days. It can be metaphorical, it can be poetic. And that
Right.
was one thing that used to rock my world, is the rabbi teaching my Intro to Judaism class said that they read it as poetry, not prose. And at first that offended me. I was like, how could you say that? It's all literal, la la la. And now I'm like, yeah, poetry, not prose. And that's fine. I'm not less Jewish because I don't believe it literally happened. And it's very nice to be able to go on, we call them rabbi trails and not just rabbit trails. We'll go on rabbi trails about like linguistic parallels and poetic turns of phrase. So I can still do learning and I can still be a textual nerd without having to put myself in that box of, 6 actual for real literal days. Like,
So one thing that actually has come up here in the chat, and I think it's relevant to the sort of discourse around like creationism, literalism, Christianity, and stuff, is Liz D points out, I grew up Episcopalian. We didn't, and also like cradle Episcopalian rep and stuff. And the thing is, one of the reasons that's coming up is because the Episcopalian Church, in common with the majority of Christian groups, as well as the historical like how Christians have traditionally interacted with the text of Genesis, it's actually not in the literalist young earth creationist way. That's actually a fairly new phenomenon that you can trace back to like really the turn of the 20th century, but it didn't even become prominent in most of American Christianity until...
and that's, well, there's history behind that too.
Oh yeah.
It has a lot to do with the whole development of like premillennial dispensationalism and that kind of movement. And then it turns into like the 60s where America was going through a lot of social upheaval and was really having to reckon with how we structure our society in terms of like ethics and morals. And when you have a super conservative, religious segment of the population who's used to being in power and used to calling all the shots, any change feels like a threat. So they circled the wagons, doubled down on like literalist theology, and just really started the ball rolling for what we're seeing fruits of today in terms of like the illegitimate court and how they're still attacking people's, fundamental right to just be left alone,
Which is ironic, given that being left alone is usually one of the sort of hallmarks of conservative rhetoric.
Yeah.
Well, but
protection
also,
is, it's a thing.
One of the things that I found interesting about that is that one of the things that repeats during history, because throughout all of history there have been groups who think that perhaps change is happening too fast, or the way things were done in the past are the better ways to do things, and generally we label these things conservative, even though what it means to be conservative in different societies has been very, very different throughout history. Like, a conservative Roman would probably have very little in common with, say, a conservative in the United States.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you often see is that when there's a sort of a reactionary reaction to some big new shift, is that they often go to an imagined version of the past, right?
Yeah.
So, all of our, seminaries and theologians are becoming way too liberal. So we're going to bring it back to being conservative. And it's like, okay, but then you basically go back to an even more conservative position that never really existed historically. And then
Yeah.
you're like, well, this is the real thing. And you see that even today, where it's like, oh, we have to get America back to, and then back to what? And the answer is, well, an imagined past that doesn't really correspond to any actual time in history.
Yeah.
And
And I
so,
just like the whole literalist thing, it ends up leading to some really gross apologetics. Like the thing about really coming into like Judaism is I don't have to defend shitty things in the Bible. I can say, listen, this was written by Bronze Age people, which is fine, but owning slaves is not fine. I don't have to defend that. I don't have to twist myself into a pretzel trying to go, why was it okay then, but not okay now? I can just go, nah, not okay. And that's
imagine
fine.
that.
Yeah. And, Christian fundamentalists are constantly getting into it, trying to defend the most heinous things. And, you see people like Dr. Josh take him down, like, why are you defending this? Why do you think it's
Yeah.
fine to own people as property? Like,
Yeah, because it's pretty obviously
stop.
not.
Stop. It's
Yeah.
not okay. It's never been okay. And yes, we are going to judge people by our standards. Like, don't
Yeah.
at me.
Yeah, you don't have to. I don't think you should judge people of the past. Like, I'm not going to judge Bronze Age people for having slaves, but I will definitely judge you in, say, 2022 for
Yeah.
having slaves, or saying that it would be totally okay if it weren't illegal or something like that. Like, no.
Yeah, and I mean, again, there are things about it that are progressive for its time, and there's things that are not progressive, and I don't have to defend things that I find morally repugnant. And Judaism has a built-in system for arguing with the text. Like, we're supposed to question it. We're supposed to wrestle with it. Being called wrestlers is part of our identity, and that's what we do. So
I feel like there's a
it's
whole story in the Torah about somebody literally wrestling with God.
yeah, you'd think just struggling all night.
And then I believe God cheats, doesn't he?
Yeah, you know.
Like, oh, now you're partially paralyzed. What are you gonna do now?
But that's okay. It gave Jacob a nice pimp walk.
There you go.
I'm just kidding. Don't take me to task for that, folks. But yeah, there's the idea that there's things in the text that are supposed to challenge you. And when you look at those, you don't just go, "Oh, that's the way it is," and you go away with whatever you were doing before. That's not how Judaism operates. And trying to inform people that not every religion is Christianity is a constantly uphill battle. Like, I feel like I'm Sisyphus just rolling this ball up the hill constantly,
Yeah.
trying to get people who either used to be Christian or grew up in a country that was culturally Christian to understand that Abrahamic religions is not some broad umbrella that means that every religion that came out of a tradition that recognized Abraham functions anything like each other.
Yeah, they really don't. It's actually a pretty broad range. Even
I'm just
internally,
like,
they
yo,
don't all
what did
function
the
the same way.
Druze ever do to you?
Right.
Why are you putting them in this? Why are they here? That's not okay. Like Abrahamic, like what
your
you
problem
meant
with
was
the Baha'i?
Christianity and maybe Islam, but
Maybe.
stop.
Yeah. People forget that it's also not just Christianity and Judaism, and sometimes Islam. It's like there's others. There's the Mandaeans, there's the Druze,
Mandaeans, yeah.
there's the Baha'i.
Yeah.
Rastafarians count.
Technically, yes, they do.
So, it's a. Please don't just say Abrahamic religions when what you actually mean is like 1 to 3 of them. If you're going to use the term, you better
honestly,
mean all of them, and then you
I
can't
would
make
say
too many
90%
statements.
of the time they really just mean Christianity.
Usually.
So I've had to call out way too many people on this when they're like religion XYZ, and I'm like, no, what you meant was Christianity. You should just say that. No, all religion, and then we have to go into the whole spiel.
Yeah,
which I won't do.
All right, so we're gonna redirect it back around to the main topic, but you know what? We have some fun little tangents. It's not like we're crunched for time right now, so I'm not gonna worry too much. So what was the first thing that really you were like, oh, this young Earth creationism, maybe it doesn't make as much sense as I thought?
Okay, well,
in terms of the science.
So once I was not trapped in literalism, it became a lot easier to internalize the science, because I've learned the science over many, many years. I knew what it taught. It wasn't like I was going, if they're, we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? I wasn't saying that. I
Okay.
knew what the theory taught. I knew about common ancestry and all that stuff. So I wasn't setting up straw men. I just didn't want to believe it.
Right.
So this idea that, oh, well, people have a failure in their education, that is not true. It's a matter of personal opinion. If you don't want to believe the consensus or the overwhelming evidence, it doesn't matter how many more facts you learn. So it took me getting the theological rug pulled out from under me, in a sense, and deconstructing from that mindset in order for me to be able to like actually internalize what I had already learned in school and kind of go back and go, okay, so when I was reading this astronomy textbook about Mars, it really did mean this thing that it said. It wasn't just mistaken about the timeline because they didn't know about the flood model. Like, no.
I promise, anyone who finds it relevant knows about the flood model, and all of the people who are, experts in things like geology or planetary science, they all know it's bullshit.
Yeah, that was the thing. Is about 3 or 4 years ago is when I started getting involved with the flat Earth debunking side of YouTube, and spending that much time in science-oriented corners started to chisel away at the false notions that I had been clinging to. So, you spend enough time around skeptics, you're going to start questioning some stuff.
Okay.
And if your personal opinions are based on solid reasoning, then you don't have anything to be afraid of. But if it's,
Wait, could we say that flat Earth debunking made you stop being a young Earth creationist?
it contributed.
Okay.
Because, it's all conspiracy based.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, at the end of the day, young Earth creationism doesn't just require biblical literalism, it requires all of science is lying.
Yeah, that's one of the things is it's less overtly conspiratorial, because usually if you ask someone who's not otherwise a big conspiracy theorist, they'll say, oh, maybe the scientists are mistaken or something. But then when you dig into like, okay, what would it actually take for this, for young Earth creationism to be true, and for essentially every scientist to be not accepting it, even though the evidence points towards it? And ultimately the answer is, well, there would have to be a conspiracy at some level.
Yeah, because at what level do you learn the truth?
Right? You certainly don't learn it in undergrad programs. Like at some point, like somewhere between your undergrad program and like becoming a researcher who's actively researching, things to do with evolution, you're going to have to come across, if it weren't true, you would come across evidence of that fact. So somewhere in there's going to be some time where they pull you aside into the shadowy room where the cabal of Satanists infect you with the devil so that now you believe in the conspiracy. And like, when does this occur?
They tell you the true shape of the earth.
Right. And the thing is, like, it obviously doesn't, right? Like, people who go and study this stuff, they're just normal people who went through normal schooling. There was no shadowy organization. Satan didn't come invade their body. Although I'm actually finding it more and more common to find creationists who literally think that, on occasion at least, scientists are like demonically oppressed or possessed or something.
Yeah.
And that some of their statements are straight out of the devil's mouth. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
I've heard that. And I've heard like, oh yeah, well, there's Christians who are scientists who believe that the earth is old. And it's like, well, they're just deceived. Because Christians can't be possessed, but they can be oppressed.
Got it.
The ins and outs of like evangelical theology, it's way more than I could accomplish here in a short little interview, but man, I could tell you stories for days.
I'm sure. All right, so this was actually only when you finally left Young Earth Creations. It was what, like 3 or 4 years ago?
It was like more like a year ago.
Oh wow.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a lot more recent than I would prefer to admit.
Hey, look, anyone who stops being an Earth creationist at some point, it was only a year ago, right? That's nothing
This
to be
is true.
embarrassed about.
I mean, but even while I was in the height of like flat Earth debunking, I was still like stubbornly clinging on to it.
Yeah, but science is a
And
liar sometimes.
well, like I said, it was me formally converting to Judaism and kind of like rebooting my entire like worldview
Yeah.
that I was like, I don't have to believe literal stuff. I don't have to do that. I don't have to reject the whole consensus of science over the last 600 years. So,
Yeah.
well, let me just do some quick catching up.
It is
So-
kind of amazing how much of science is directly contradicted by young Earth creationism. I actually once tried to come up with science that did not directly contradict young Earth creationism, and I thought I'd done it with optics, but then it was pointed out to me that because of the way that light actually works, optics would also be different if young Earth creationism weren't true, and also anything other than basically God just created the distant starlight in transit were true. So even optics contradicts all but one very specific version of young Earth creationism.
Yeah. Plus, there's all these different arguments that have become far more well understood over the last 30 years. You know, the thing about ERVs is, to me, it's a slam dunk
Oh, agreed.
that for common ancestry, like, you're really going to have to bend yourself into some crazy shapes to get around that one.
They do.
And I'm glad that I'm not stuck in the position of trying to do that.
Yeah, they really do with the ERVs. For those of you who might not know, ERVs or ERVs are endogenous retroviruses, and basically, one class of viruses, the retroviruses, obviously, they don't actually just directly hijack the machinery of your cell. Instead, they actually insert their genetic code into your genome, and then when you express that part of your genome, then you start making viruses in that cell. But sometimes the virus inserts its genetic material into a cell, and then it doesn't actually get activated, and it might even be targeted by the cell for deactivation, because your cells have defense mechanisms like that. And if it happens to be that it infected something in the germline, which is usually going to be either the cells that are going to be, it's going to be the cells that are making your gametes, so your sperm or egg cells, right? Then that viral genome can be passed down to your offspring. And the thing is, the genome's pretty big, you know. The haploid size,
Just a little.
yeah, the haploid size of the human genome is about 3.2, I believe, billion base pairs.
It's a lot.
So any virus that inserts itself has a lot of options, and it's not really strongly targeting any particular part of the genome. It's largely random. So then the thing is, if two organisms have an endogenous retroviral insertion at the same point, it's hard to come up with a reason why they would have that other than literally sharing an ancestor who themselves was actually infected with that virus. And there's a pattern of these viral genome insertions that stretches across like the entire taxonomy of life, basically. So Vandalia, I will keep that question noted down, and I will be asking it right when the Q&A starts. Thank you very much for the question. We got a super chat question already, so...
Nice.
So yeah, that is a really big slam dunk. So I think that really covers a lot of. So now
Time for breaking it.
So now I assume that you still have friends and family from your time as a evangelical Christian and whatnot.
Yeah, I think about them quite frequently, but it is not my job nor responsibility to try to talk them out of anything.
Okay.
So I don't.
How? No, that's fair. How do they feel about this? Are you open with them about the fact that you're not a young Earth creationist? I'm sure they know
Most
that you're
of
not
them
a
don't
Christian.
know. Most of them don't know that either.
Oh, really?
They wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. I thought
I haven't made any kind of like official, coming out post or
you
anything.
didn't like get up on a soapbox at a family gathering.
It's been tempting, but
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
Because the last family gathering I was at was my brother's wedding, and I'm like, this is not the time.
No, I wouldn't do it at a wedding either. That would be somewhat inappropriate, I think.
Yeah.
That's
Not
supposed to be a day about your brother, not you. His wedding.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's more than fair. pro tip to everyone: never make someone else's wedding about you. It's like a gigantic dick move.
Yeah.
Not okay.
Tacky.
Yeah, never okay in my book. I mean, unless there's a medical emergency, then maybe you can make it about that. You know, if you've got a compound fracture, then sure, you can say, hey, maybe we should call the ambulance.
Yeah,
But
different
like,
story.
right, short of that, maybe, you know, focus on the person or people getting married, presumably. Usually it takes more than one person to get married.
Yeah.
So, okay. Do any of your friends or family from when you were younger, or Christian and young Earth creationists, know about the fact that neither of those things are true anymore?
I think probably one or two, but it's mostly because they had already come out of it.
Okay.
So
So do you feel
with
like
them, I felt comfortable talking about it because I knew I wasn't going to get drawn into an argument.
right?
I would just be like, hey, here's where I'm at. And they go, oh, sweet, cool. And then we move on.
Okay. Do you think that if a large portion of those friends and family found out, that would be a strain on those relationships?
Maybe. Like I said, there's most of the people who knew me would not be surprised that I am what I am now.
Okay.
I've always been a little bit of a contrarian. If you tell me I can't do something, I will go out of my way to prove you wrong. So that's kind of been, that precociousness has been a part of my personality ever since I was a wee lass.
I can't imagine why a contrarian would find themselves feeling at home in Judaism.
No kidding, right? So just asking questions, that's just been my thing. That's what I love doing, and that was always really frustrating about being involved with evangelicals, is that they're always accusing other people of like, oh, you're not allowed to question things, and I'm like, no, you need to look in the mirror. Because if you tell people that you don't believe in the rapture, or if you don't believe in dispensationalism, they're ready to kick you out and say like, oh, you were never really saved. You're
Rapture
not
is
filled with the Spirit.
such a weird litmus test, since literally no one believed in the rapture like 200 years ago.
Oh my god, right?
That's always one of the weirdest ones to me. It's like, look, I don't care if you believe in the rapture, but you gotta recognize that this is not like a historical Christian belief, right? Like
I just remember at first they had me in the first half, you know, and I remember as I got more literate with the biblical text, I remember going, this is exactly the opposite of every pattern that we've been shown so far. So in the narrative, God will protect a select group of people while he's doing something like to everyone else. And then you want to tell me that all of a sudden he goes JK and he removes those people while he's like, no.
yeah, it doesn't seem to be in character.
Yeah, that's not the same character. So
okay.
can we take a brief break?
Absolutely. So guys, we will be right back momentarily, and in the meantime, enjoy the stylings of Ben Hovind's music. So there you go. All right, we are back. So, thank you everyone for sticking with me. Do hit like; it does help the channel out a whole lot. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do that. And we will be back to the interview, and we only have one major thing left, really, to talk about before we jump into the Q&A.
Okay.
So the big thing is, how do you now feel about your former young Earth creationist influences like Kent Hovind or Ken Ham or Karl Baugh? And I think I already know the answer to this question, but I feel like we have to actually answer it on air. So
I have to answer it on air. Okay. In the most diplomatic way possible.
It doesn't have to be the most diplomatic. Just, PG-13.
They think that they're well-intentioned and that they're trying to defend the faith, but they're making it almost impossible to coexist with rational reality. Like,
Sorry, I was a little muted there. Yeah, no, that's fair.
If you've bound up your Christianity with taking the Bible actually just super literally, then you have seriously jeopardized people's Christianity. Like, I've tried to tell somebody about this not super long ago, that believing Ron Wyatt found the Ark and that he found all these other relics being like something that they're basing their faith on. Well, if you find out they're a fraud, then you're going to start going, well, why am I a Christian?
That's one of the things that honestly confuses me, because, okay, I do think most young Earth creationists are well-intentioned and misinformed. But I know some of them aren't. I know some of them are lying, and I know because I've been able to catch them in lies. And, I mean, so, when you say mutually contradictory things within a single speech there, Andrew Snelling, I mean, you're not telling the truth. So then I think, well, maybe the motive is to keep people as Christians, and I understand that motive. But if you're going to lie to them to get them as Christians, what do you think is going to happen when and if they find out that you were lying to them? It's not going to keep them there.
That's one of the things that I wanted to hold on to it so bad, is because I was like, well, if I can't take the Bible literally, then why am I even a Christian? If you don't think it actually happened, why are you even here? And that's one of those other things that, getting into Judaism freed me from all that. I can have a vibrant intellectual life. I can study religious texts, and those can coexist without any kind of conflict. So, I mean, hell, you can be an atheist Jew. I don't care who doesn't like that. That's common.
There are people who actually get surprisingly offended by that idea, and most of them aren't Jewish.
They're either not Jewish, which is the vast majority of them, or they're specifically very Orthodox Jewish.
Yeah. So that is one thing. A lot of times when people are complaining about religions broadly, if they include the Jews, it really is usually the conservative Jews that they're talking about. And to be fair,
really,
they
what
have
they mean,
a lot of the same problems as conservative.
I would
not
try
conservative.
to use the word Orthodox there, because conservative / majority is a...
You're right. I misspoke there.
But yeah, I know what you meant.
Yeah. And they really do have a lot of the same problems, actually, as fundamentalist evangelical
There's
Christianity.
a reason that there is a big overlap between evangelicals and Orthodox Jews. And I would exclude modern Orthodox from that, because largely they're more progressive than Haredi or Satmar Jews or whatever, but there's a reason that there's a big overlap there. Textual literalism, a tendency towards homophobia and things like that.
Sexism, can't forget the sexism.
Sexism, that tends to be why that there's a big overlap in the Venn diagram.
Yeah, it also tends to be why when you ask evangelical Christians, they'll often say the Orthodox, those are the guys who are at least trying. It's like, no, you don't get to invalidate everyone else's religion
exactly, and
they are more similar to you.
It pisses me off, because I'm like, literally, Orthodox Jews make up maybe 10% of all Jews worldwide. Maybe 10%.
Oh, no, it's 100%. Just ask them.
Yeah, yeah. But you don't get to invalidate someone's Judaism because they're not a theist. That's not a requirement to be a Jew. And it really, you can be mad about it, but it's not going to change. There's an entire humanist branch of Judaism that would just be like, deal with it and put their sunglasses on.
Nice. So one question that I don't always ask, but I think I will ask this time, is if you could get any of your major creationist influences in a room and give them a statement of yours, who would it be and what would you tell them?
That is a very challenging question because
And it wasn't on the
honestly,
list.
I really wouldn't want to be in a room with any of them.
Well, we're going to assume that you're perfectly safe, and then you can just leave the room afterwards. But they're just here to listen to the thing that you have to tell them, and then they're gone. That's it.
I just find them all generally very odious.
That's fair. Maybe you're on the phone with them. You have to share a space.
Goodness gracious. I've gotten to a point where I just don't want to interact with people like that. Just because there's so many things that I would say to, like, for instance, Kent Hovind, who I have met before. I would just, there's too many dunks, and that's not productive.
Okay, hold on.
It's because I'm not there to change their mind.
We need to hear the story, though, about you meeting Kent Hovind, because I'm not aware of this.
I swear I told you this when we were reading through his dissertation.
Okay. Was I drinking for that, though?
I'll tell again. Okay, but first, let me just get this out of the way. If I did have something to say to Kent Hovind, which I don't, it would be, you don't know Hebrew. You need to stop telling people that Genesis, this verse, this chapter means this thing, because you're wrong. And the fact that you've been a Christian who believes a literal Bible for 40, 50 years and have not once bothered to learn the language says a lot about how seriously you really take this.
That's actually something that I've noticed, because I do not consider myself to be some kind of Hebrew scholar. I know extremely little of it, but I'm still apparently leagues better than even like the professional young earth creationist like organizations. Like, unlike AIG, I can recognize if a Torah scroll is upside down in my picture, guys.
Oh my god, that's so cringe.
It's like there's a whole little meme out there is AIG putting pictures of Torah scrolls upside down on their website. And it's just, or just Hebrew text in general. It doesn't always have to be a Torah scroll, right? I know why. It's because they're graphic artist guys, don't know anything about Hebrew, and so when you put a Hebrew text upside down, suddenly it looks like it's a left justified text, which is what they're used to seeing. But it's not. Pro tip, guys, you read Hebrew right to left, like most Semitic languages. Actually, I think
it's bad. I
think only in Ethiopia are there Semitic languages that are read left to right, because the Amharic script goes left to right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the only Semitic script that goes left to right.
Also, but I won't go into the whole chat, but I will say, if you just need a quick Uno reverse card to pull out on people, tell them this: unless you were sitting on someone's Beit Din personally, you don't get to tell anybody who is and who is not a Jew.
And chances are you weren't.
Chances are you weren't. Yeah.
So there's going to be a very small portion of the human species that was in any particular person's Beit Din. And
if you don't know what a Beit Din is, that's
you definitely don't know.
You get to go Google later.
So, what's the story of meeting Kent Hovind? How did that happen? Where were you? Come on.
This is so funny because it's not actually related to his creation stuff. I didn't go to a seminar. I didn't go to the Dinosaur Adventureland. This was completely random. So I think back in 03 or 04, we went down to Pensacola for something, maybe a beach trip. And I remember saying to the people I was with, oh, this is Pensacola. Their Dinosaur Adventureland is nearby. We should drop in and see if they're open. And the day that we went, they weren't. However, Kent saw us kind of milling around and was like, hey, you guys want to come in and, talk about the Lord or whatever. So he invited us in, and we just got to talking, just chatting about nothing in particular. And I remember his wife at the time, Joe,
Yep.
came out and said something about she was a music teacher. She taught piano. And I said, oh, well, me and my friend are in a degree program for music. So we talked about music. And she said, sometimes I use a snare drum to help them keep time. And I said, wow, that's what we play. Can we listen to the snare drum if, maybe see if it's out of tune? And I ended up tuning Joe Hovind's snare drum for her music students because I always carry a drum key on me. And I made it sound as good as possible considering the quality of the drum. But that was my Kent Hovind stories. We were sitting around just talking about nothing in particular while I'm tuning his first wife's snare drum for her music lessons. Yeah.
Hey, that's an interesting story. All right.
It's very random.
That's weird.
Yeah. And I just remember,
yeah.
like, we were like, oh man, it sucks that the museum's not open today or whatever. And, it just was very surreal. I look back on that and I'm like, I was in his house. Like, we were sitting there talking to him and Joe. Like, what's going on?
The house that he would later be evicted from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Support to you, Joe, wherever you are. I'm glad you got out of that.
Heck to Eric, too, man. Because he was a big part of getting Kent out of their lives, so...
Yeah.
I mean, look, there's a lot I disagree with Eric Hovind about, and that there's a lot that he does that I don't really like. However, you know what? It's not easy to cut an abusive parent out of your life, and so...
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Eric, if you're ever listening to this, you are welcome to find me and chat about it, because I know exactly what it's like to cut an abusive parent out of your life.
Yeah, so props on that, man, because... I don't care who you are or what you believe. That's a big step to go through, and it's not easy, and I'm sure that there are still times when that's something that weighs on Eric's mind is, did I make the right choice there or something? And yes, and you did, by the way. You absolutely did.
I can tell you that because he's still involved in, like, evangelical circles, he deals with a lot of pressure from people telling him, like, oh, you should forgive your dad, or you should reconcile, or you should do this, or you should do that. So if Eric is out there and he finds this clip, Eric, don't listen to them. You got to make the decisions that are healthy for you and for your well-being. So if that includes not interacting with somebody that you happen to be biologically related to, don't let anybody talk you out of it. Don't let them guilt trip you because they don't know your situation.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, it's pretty clear that he was emotionally and physically abusive with his kids, and probably both with his wives too. So, Joe won't admit to him being physically abusive. However, she also won't deny it. And so, she has theological reasons for not wanting to speak ill of her husband. But she does not have theological reasons for denying ill treatment if it didn't happen. So, I'm not saying it definitely happened, but...
There's so much about fundamentalism and evangelical theology that ends up being so damaging. And I don't care what religion or non-religion people are. It's not my job to talk them out of it. I don't care to talk them out of it. But if you are under the umbrella of something that's that harmful, you really need to get out of it. Like, there's other ways to be a Christian than perpetuating those cycles of abuse.
Actually, there's a lot of different ways to be a Christian.
There's a lot of different ways. Exactly.
There's a whole catalog you could order from.
Yeah.
Some of which are, to be fair, harder to get into than others. You know.
True.
I mean, if you decide that if you decide that you really need to join, like, the Coptic Orthodox Church, I mean, good luck.
Props, man. If you end up, like, becoming fluent in Coptic, like, respect.
Virtually none of the actual Coptic Orthodox Christians even know Coptic.
You know what? There's a Coptic church less than 2 blocks away from my apartment, so I'll have to check.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I'll bet at least the priests and maybe some of the cantors know a fair bit of Coptic, but my guess would be that most of the congregants know very little.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, it's a dead language, right? It's no one's first language. For those of you guys who don't know, Coptic is the last stage of the ancient Egyptian language. So after hieroglyphs stopped being written, that language continued on as a common spoken language up into like the 7th, 8th century. And now it basically only exists as a liturgical language for the Christians in Egypt who themselves descend from the actual Egyptians, as opposed to various invading groups. So, yeah. It's a very obscure language. It's very hard to learn because, for one thing,
Yeah.
I mean, there's like virtually no resources about it. And those resources that do exist have a tendency to be in Greek or Arabic. So, um, anyway, I think it's actually time to start getting into the Q&A. So here's how the Q&A works. First, like we said, if you super chat, that will shift your question to the front of the line. There is, however, no requirement that you super chat. It just helps the channel out, and I do appreciate it. And of course, it does get to the top line. If we get too many questions, we may not finish all of them. So there is also that. It does basically guarantee that if there's a busy Q&A session, it does make it so you're going to get your question answered.
I love answering questions.
Yeah, ask questions. Now, the other thing is, if you don't super chat, I do need you to tag me so that it hits my brain effectively, right?
And if you don't want to tap all those letters, you can also @ me.
Yeah, if you notice a question that I've missed, feel free to
I copied a few of them into the chat so that I can remember to answer them.
So, we're going to start out with a super chat from Vandalia1998, who said, I have no power at home, so typing this on my cell phone at a restaurant, well, that's rough. I hope your power comes back soon, because it's too hot to be without power. Question, is there anything you thought was, oh my god, how did I not know that, once you stopped being a young Earth creationist?
Nothing comes to mind, because I was very informed about what the scientific consensus was, even if I didn't accept it, like even if I was in denial about it or whatnot. Learning about ERVs actually was exciting to me, because that whole field of genetics wasn't really something that had been developed as strongly as it was when I was in high school in the 90s and 2000s. So science has progressed enough in the last 20 or 30 years for me to learn new things that actually probably would have changed my mind a lot sooner if those fields had been as robust as they are now.
All right, so now we actually have a question that was both super chatted as well as regular chatted a few times.
Okay.
So it seems like it's a burning question, and so first I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to make a quick statement. So
okay.
Why did you convert to Judaism, and is that as rare as I hear it is? And one thing is that, and it says if you care to share, and that is one thing, is that this is technically leaving Earth creationism, so you're free to share as little or as much about other religious things that you want. So, but that is the question.
I mean, the very long story short is I wanted to.
I mean, that is usually why people convert to things.
Well, yes, but I mean, it can go very in depth. Like, this story is a very involved tale that spans most of my life. So the short answer is I wanted to. A slightly less short answer is I really like the Hebrew text and wanted to immerse myself. And ironically, after I converted is when I found the crypto Jews in my family tree. So in a weird way, it was like coming back to the community of my ancestors, I guess, if you want to make it sound poetic.
Okay. So that also covers the Venerable Beats question, so I won't bother, because, hey, B, you got that question already answered. So JS says, Old Testament scholar Ben Stanhope is another former young Earth creationist evangelical who also turned to Judaism. Do you think this phenomenon is more common than many think?
That is a good question. I am not qualified to answer that because I don't have a data set other than knowing about that one scholar. But now that I am aware of that person, I am very excited to go check out their work, because it's a very niche group to be in, and it's always hard to find people who really get it. Like, there's a very specific struggle that people who have deconstructed and deconverted and then gone into a different faith tradition deal with. And then specifically going into Judaism, which is something that Christianity wants to be like, oh yeah, we totally built our stuff off of their religion, but it could not be more different in every conceivable way.
Yeah,
So there's always this like, wait, why did you go, why'd you go backwards?
that is one thing that
Yeah.
I feel like this is a pretty basic fact about religious history, which is that modern rabbinic Judaism and Christianity do come from a common source, but modern rabbinic Judaism is not that source. It's also been developing its ideas and its interaction with texts and societies for, that whole 2000 years. Like
Yeah.
that's also a thing. And pretending otherwise, I think, is not a good way to go for anyone,
Yeah.
whether
The
you're
only
religious or
thing
not.
that I'll say about that is there is no such thing as Judeo-Christian anything. That is not something that exists. Judeo-Christian is not a value set. It's not a religious set. It does not exist because the Judeo part and the Christian part are completely diametrically opposed. So anytime someone's like, we have Judeo-Christian, no, you don't. The Judeo part is just there for you to make yourself feel nice. There's no Judeo about it. So just because you read our text does not make you Judeo in any form.
So Mackenzie Brown says, how long did your journey towards conversion take? Did you think about it for a long time, or did you just know all at once?
My journey was super quick and yet super long because I was on the journey for like 10 to 15 years before I formally converted. The actual conversion took like 6 months, which is extremely unusual. Most people take at least a year minimum
Yeah, I was gonna
because
say
they want you to
that's
go through a whole cycle of holidays and stuff. But I had already been literate in a lot of the holidays and the practices and stuff like that. So going before my Beit Din was it was a formality at that point, which it usually is a formality because if your rabbi says you're ready, then you're ready.
right.
But I remember having this conversation with the panel, and then as soon as it was over, one of the rabbis emailed me and was like, "Have you thought about going to rabbinical school?"
Nice.
So yeah, I was light years ahead of most people who convert because I had already had a lot of experience with some of the larger, broader strokes of Judaism.
Hmm.
It was just a matter of making it official on paper and kind of figuring out which branch of Judaism I felt fit me the best. So yeah, it was a kind of a funny story to get that email literally like within an hour of the panel being
Wow.
over. Yeah.
Some nice feedback, I suppose.
Yeah, that was very flattering. I was very like
Okay, but what's the answer?
humbled by
Have
that.
you?
I have considered it.
Okay.
I've gone to an open house on Zoom for the local Ziegler School here in Los Angeles. That's up in the air. There's a lot of factors going into this, not the
Okay.
least of which is financial.
Yeah.
School is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
So,
Just have God pay for it.
that's what the people in Israel do with their yeshivas. It's like they have it paid for by the government.
Okay, so this is from Balin Polotico. And by the way, guys, if I mispronounce your names, please let me know. This is a question for Vishanti. Okay. If you have a favorite, what is your favorite geological period in Earth's history? Also, sorry about boots. Which, yeah,
Oh.
I'm also sorry about boots.
Yeah, I originally had been penciled in to do this last weekend.
Yeah.
But that did not happen because I lost my little baby girl kitty. So I am still in mourning, and it's going to be a while before I'm not in mourning. But I am very thankful for anybody that donated last week and the week before. That really meant the world to me.
Yeah.
And
Those
just
bills
that
don't go away.
just that people would share of their limited resource for somebody they don't know or for a kitty cat they don't know, like that really meant a lot to me. And I can guarantee you that if you had had the opportunity to meet my kitty cat, you would have just fallen in love with her immediately. She was just the sweetest little thing. So I appreciated it, and I did give her lots of kisses on her little kitty cat head for everybody that donated, so she was very loved.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
But also, what is your favorite geological period, if you have one?
Favorite geological period? Honestly, I don't know that I have a favorite because I'm still learning some of the more detailed parts of each of them, because you kind of get the broad strokes when you're in school, but you have to kind of actively decide to go in depth with
Right.
them. Astronomy was more my thing. I didn't really focus on geology as much. I really was more into planets and novas and things like that. So, geology, that's something I'll have to come back to you on because I need to refresh more on what the quirks are of each.
I mean, I can tell you the right answer.
The one with the ceratosaurs?
Yeah, Jurassic.
That's
Exactly.
right. There you go.
The correct answer is the Jurassic period, even though that's actually usually not what I say.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Sir Equinox says, you touched on this, but I want to ask what you, Vishanti, thought about scientists when you were a young Earth creationist. Did you see them as evil or misguided or what?
Misguided mostly.
Yeah. That
I
was
didn't
me too.
ascribe evil intent to them. I just was like, yeah, they're just denying the truth. You know, just kind of silly. Venerable Bead says Dennis Prager's gonna fight you. I'll fight Dennis Prager in the back of a parking lot at Denny's. Bring it.
I feel like you would win a fist fight with Dennis Prager. Like he outmasses you, but he's got to be really slow and tired and old.
Listen, and I fight dirty, so I'm not even gonna try to be polite about that. So
Okay. Yeah. If I were a betting dinosaur, my money would be on Vishanti for the win against Dennis Prager. But to be fair, I actually would probably put my money on most people in a straight up fist fight with Dennis Prager, but
yeah,
like besides Dennis Prager.
honestly, I would not want to do close range combat because that's just generally not going to end very well for me because I'm very tiny. So I need to go with range attacks. You know,
Let's see.
guerrilla style.
That's with the E and the U, not the O.
Yes, not the animal.
All right.
Oath Hazel Creek says for Vishanti, is there anything that you think anyone could have showed you or told you that would have helped you deconvert earlier? Honestly, no. I'm very strong-willed, and once I've made up my mind about something, it is quite nearly impossible to get me to change my mind on it. So I'm the poster child for leading a horse to water. Like, you can show me all the things in the world that you want to, but until I've decided that I'm ready, it's just gonna bounce off. Which is good if I happen to agree with reality. I'll be one of your biggest advocates. I'll go to bat for you, super like ally. But if I happen to like, example, younger creationism, it's not gonna end well. Yeah.
DM Wing asks if the donation drive for the bills for Boots is still live.
It's not. As I think a few days ago, I set the calendar to just cut it off early because even though I did have quite a substantial amount of bills, I didn't feel right about leaving it open.
Okay.
Just because she had passed. And to me, the initial drive of that was to help figure out what was going on with her because we still don't know what happened. And that's the worst thing to me is that I don't know what happened to her.
Yeah.
So, people are welcome to contribute if they want to. I can give you my information, but I just didn't feel right leaving it open after that. So,
well, if you guys do want to help contribute for Boots' final expenses, and you have trouble finding Vishanti, you can let me know and I'll make sure that she can get in touch with you and everything.
Yeah.
So, but also don't feel an obligation, you know. Let's see. Where was I? We did get a heart for cats and for Boots from Wolf, so that was very nice.
No.
Let's see. So here's one from Inkboy. What is your view of astrology? Is it like religion or something else?
This is something that I differ from my sister on quite strongly. I find astrology fascinating only for personality typing, in the sense that like we have different personality typing systems like INTJ, like Myers-Briggs,
Mhm.
or what's the other one that Professor Dave did a whole series on this about different personality types. And I find that there's a fun correlation between the personality types that are outlined in Western astrology. But my sun sign's an Aquarius, but I'm super intellectual and book smart because I have a Virgo moon. Okay, cool. That just happens to line up. But I'm definitely not going to go and say that when I was born, the stellar influences were such that, because, dude, even the closest planet is way too far away to have any tangible effect on you. So it's a happy coincidence at best.
Yeah. Okay. So
But I mean, there's this one saying from the Talmud, the rabbis say that there's no constellation for Israel. So, like, all the nations have their own specific constellations and their fates can be determined by the stars, but Israel's cannot. So, there is Jewish astrology, though. I did find some texts on that, which is kind of cool, but I haven't dug
actually,
into it.
it turns out that there's a whole lot of different astrology out there, and
Mhm.
there's Islamic astrology out there. You can find Christian astrology out there. It's
Yeah.
the idea of astrology was basically just a background assumption for a lot of history that, oh yeah, of course, you can, the stars have some kind of influence on events on Earth and whatnot, which is like that's just what
Well,
everyone thought.
there's also a book that I remember reading called The Gospel in the Stars, where this guy tries to make the case that
Oh yeah,
the
I've seen
the
that.
12 major constellations and their like subsidiary stars tell the story of the gospel, and people have known it since forever, and it's
And
kind of a
Hovind was hawking
stretch.
that book
Yeah.
for a while. I think he kind
Well,
of
that's how
stopped
I
though.
found it.
Well, yeah, okay, that's fair. That does make
Yeah.
sense. Fade to Gray says, thoughts on Ben Shapiro's representation of Judaism? I'll bet I can guess. Yeah, that's about what I would have expected.
Yeah. Just
Fair
that's my
enough.
thought.
There you go. Um, this is from JS. Did scholarship on ancient Near East culture and mythology around creation and cosmology influence your journey out of young Earth creationism?
Yes, to a degree it did actually. Big props to Digital Hammurabi, because that dude, he knows his stuff, and being able to learn about the other ancient Near Eastern mythologies and texts and stuff was very instrumental to me going, hey, wow, these guys really did influence each other. Like, if someone goes, oh, the Bible copied it, I'll fist fight you. But there is overlap there because they were all neighbors. There was a common idea of how the world worked and how cosmology operated. So I'm not surprised that there's a lot of parallels there. I'm not surprised that there are certain passages in the Bible that seem to directly make a point of standing in opposition to a certain culture of the time. Why wouldn't it? You
Yeah,
know?
well, that's, I think one of the things is, I mean, you can feel free to disagree, but um, the writers of the Hebrew scriptures, right? Well, big thing about them was maintaining their identity during various
Mm.
times where they were conquered or exiled or things like that. So, of course, a lot of it is going to be written in direct reaction to the cultures around them, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's quite likely that many of the dietary restrictions specifically were created not because the people writing them had some big problem with shellfish or pigs, but
Yeah.
because this is what those people over there eat, and we are going to start identifying ourselves
Yeah.
as the people who
We're
don't eat
different,
those
so we're
things.
not going to do that. Yeah.
Right. Because the thing
That's
is,
the motivation behind a lot of
right.
the commandments, actually. It's these other people do X, we're not going to do X because we're different.
Yeah.
So that was the thing, is setting yourself apart from them, like creating your own identity. That was a very big motivator. And like this week, the issue of tassels came up, and tying tassels and having tassels and fringe on the bottom of your garments, that's a very common motif in ancient Near Eastern textiles. So, being that that's in vogue, it's the fashion, how do you make that distinct? Well, Israel ties a blue thread on it. So there you go.
Actually, I think one of the things that I can say about various Hebrew scriptures is they've been fantastically successful at creating a distinct population that has maintained distinctiveness, sometimes to its detriment in terms of their well-being physically.
Yeah.
But it is certainly an impressive feat to have literature from so long ago that still manages to make a direct impact on the daily lives of a very identifiable group of people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's honestly, it's kind of impressive because a lot of cultures that we know about from even a few hundred years ago have assimilated or been genocided out of existence or whatnot. And even if they did have very rich cultures and their own textual history, Jews, it's kind of crazy that, after 3,000 years at least, we're still here and we're still distinct. So it's like, wow, that's kind of baked in. The federal lead asked if I'm bad at poker. No, I'm actually quite good at poker. I'm just very expressive when I talk.
Actually, I'll be honest. I can only have fun with poker for about 1 or 2 hands, and I'm just like, I'm so.
Yeah, I don't tend to play it very often. The times I do play it, I'm fairly decent. I never stop to become a master strategist or anything, but facially, I don't tend to telegraph.
Yeah, you got that you have a poker face when you want to.
Yeah, when it's because I'm not communicating ideas and stuff, so I don't have to be very expressive.
.NET Linux Enthusiast says, since you studied the Hebrew so much, do you have an opinion about when the Torah was written?
What part of it? Because I'm still working out how I feel about the documentary hypothesis. Some of it seems very convincing. Some of it I'm not very sure about. So I'm not as informed as I would like to be yet. I do have friends that have done PhDs on the history of the Torah or the Tanakh and when certain things were written. I just haven't dug into that literature. If I do learn more and come down on one side of the fence or the other, I'll be sure to kind of let you know.
JS says, and this isn't really a question, but quote, Judeo-Christian became popular after around 1945 when anti-Semitism became no longer acceptable in polite society.
Is there a time where it's been acceptable?
In polite society, yeah.
Yeah. When has it not been acceptable? I'm just like, wait. I'm having trouble thinking about.
Well, in the direct wake of, the Holocaust, it was usually considered to be fairly impolite to be overtly dismissive or hateful towards Jews and Judaism.
I don't know. I'm kind of. It's a little irritating because I'm still hearing anti-Semitism in broad ass daylight.
Yeah.
People like globalists this or George Soros that, and I'm like, what do you mean? It never.
Jewish Matt Powell series.
That dude again. If people want to say that they're a rabbi, tell us where you got your smicha from.
If the answer is nowhere.
If the answer is nowhere, friend, you're not a rabbi. Mm-mm. That is not how this works.
Yeah.
It's not just, I'm just going to call myself a teacher, and the word for teacher is rabbi. No. No, it's not how it works.
No.
It's the equivalent of calling yourself a professor when you don't have at least a master's degree in something.
Yeah. So. Yeah, you have to at least have had the degree requirements, and also at least have taught at least, like one course in a university or college setting.
Yeah. At least.
Yeah. Let's see. I think there was another one. For Vishanti, this is from Ulf Hazel Creek. If you played poker with Kent Hovind, Prager, and Ben Shapiro, would you keep your poker face? Not a serious question, but answer if you like.
I don't think
all your
any
favorite
of them except
people.
Ben Shapiro would bother playing poker because Kent Hovind's probably like, that's of the devil. Gambling is wrong.
Kent Hovind probably wouldn't, but I don't.
He probably wouldn't.
Do Prager and Shapiro have
Prager may or may not.
Okay.
He's so busy pretending to be evangelical that he might not, just to keep up appearances because he wants evangelical money. Ben Shapiro probably plays poker. He might actually be decent at it, but I don't care to find out. I would be too busy projectile vomiting onto the table.
That is fair. So I think that we are. Oh wait, I was about to say I think we're out of question, but then JS comes in. So what I think we'll do is we'll keep. I usually try to keep Q&A for about a half an hour ish, but I think we're still getting a fair few questions. So if we get enough questions, we can probably push it to about 45 past, and I think we'll start
I got
wrapping up.
nothing else to do. I love answering questions.
There you go.
Yeah.
So JS says, what do you think of Dr. Michael Heiser and his stuff?
Some of it is useful. I quite like some of his work, but there are some videos on his channel where he's reaching a little too hard. He really wants to try to harmonize biblical history with pseudoscience. There's a little too much going on that is a little too close to ancient aliens. He doesn't want to call them ancient aliens because he doesn't believe in aliens. But he did a video. Yeah, he'll talk about Nephilim because that's what the Christian insides do. He'll talk about Göbekli Tepe and how that relates to the flood model, and it's just like, guy, just look. Human history is a lot older than 6,000 years. You're just gonna have to deal with it. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And I don't think that he's prepared to make that concession. So his academic work, I feel like, could be very useful. He is pretty knowledgeable in Hebrew, but again, the fact that he's a Christian who really wants to make it work historically is gonna kneecap some of his ideas.
Scott Duke asks, are you going for a Wonder Woman look?
Yes.
That is an easy question. Liz D says that I didn't ask her question, but I'm not seeing it, so please do retype it. I promise I did not intentionally ignore it. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is from Liz D. Did you convert to Judaism just for the jokes like Jerry Seinfeld's dentist Tim Watley?
No.
Okay.
I tend to find New York Jewish humor not very funny.
Ah, there you go.
I prefer dry humor, so that self-deprecating stuff has never really been my style.
What would you convert to Christian Eastern Orthodoxy just for the hats?
Maybe the church cats.
Well, they do have a lot of church cats. Yeah, those are the two big things, the two big draws why anyone ever converts to that religion is church cats and hats.
Church cats and hats.
Although it's actually not very easy to get the hats, you have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, turns out that just converting doesn't quite get you the fancy hat.
Coyote says Judaism must get props for brutal honesty. There's nothing else in the ancient world so scathingly self-critical as the Hebrew prophets. You are correct, my friend.
Yeah, man.
If there's anyone that knows how to give them some real talk, it's Hebrew prophets.
Yeah, they did not pull punches.
They didn't pull punches. They showed up and are like, you guys are messing this up, and here's how badly you're messing it up, and I'm going to do some public theater to show you exactly how bad this is.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to lay on my side for a long time and cook my food over dung just to make the point. It's like, wow.
Gross.
That's aggressive.
I'll take a pass on that particular form of activism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no offense to the ancient prophets and whatnot, but I'm just gonna try not to eat dung as a rule.
It doesn't say that he ate it; he just cooked his food over it, which is still like.
Yeah, it's gonna get in there. So JS asks, may I ask how old was your cat? No need to answer if you don't want to.
Oh, she had just turned 17 in June.
That's quite a long kitty life.
She did not look it, which is why I was very blindsided by this.
Yeah.
She quite literally, up until several weeks ago, was still physically running through the house and playing and getting upset with me if I didn't play with her.
Aww.
So, yeah, she did not act like a 17-year-old cat. She wasn't, like, decrepit at all. She was very energetic. So when I noticed that her energy level changed and stuff like that, I was like, wait, something is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott Duke asks, since you can consider rabbi training, are you more of a scholar or a caregiver?
Scholar. 100%. 100%.
Okay.
one of the biggest things that has made me not actually take going to rabbinical school seriously is I have zero interest in going into pastoral care. Like, if all I could do is study all day and write scholarly articles and things like that, that is what I would do.
I mean, I'm not an expert, but I feel like there are people who do go to that through that training, then rather than become a rabbi at, like with a congregation, then go and do scholarly stuff and teach at schools and things. I feel like
Oh, yeah.
that must be an option.
It is. I'm literally the kind of person that would squirrel myself away in a, cabin somewhere and just study
Yeah.
texts all day and things like that. So
You don't want to go
that's
like
what I do for fun. I write essays on the text for fun.
Okay.
So if I was able to make my living doing that, it would just be the best.
Vesta Freya would like you to know that you are strikingly beautiful and have expressive eyes.
Thank you.
There you go. Old Hazel Creek does point out that dung does work as fuel.
It does.
It does.
Does not smell pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, cow patties have been actually a fairly frequent source of cooking fuel for a lot of people in a lot of cultures around the world.
I just had flashbacks to Alabama, where you would divide the football field up into little squares and take bets on where the cow's going to poop.
Hey, there's not that much to do in Alabama. You got to find something.
And people asked me why I moved.
I can't imagine why you would find California more interesting than Alabama. It's impossible to say.
I mean, I literally lived in the buckle of the Bible Belt, so I did not fit in culturally, politically, just at all. I have never fit in there. It's nice being outside, the food is delicious, but oh my god, it's too humid, it's too conservative, there's too many hurricanes, I can't.
Yeah, there really aren't very many hurricanes out in California.
Extremely rare.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Sunny and warm most of the time. David B. 22585 also lived in Alabama and ended up in California. Did I know this and forget it?
It's possible.
What part of Alabama, if you do not mind my asking?
Well, I do think, though, that while we get that answer from David, we're going to ask... I will let one more question come in after this while I'm doing some wrap-up stuff, and I think then we're actually going to start wrapping it up.
Oh, Tuscaloosa. Oh. That's okay. I'll let it slide because you don't live there anymore.
So JS asks, what's the deal with the female superhero style you often have?
I just like costuming superheroes.
Yeah. It seems like
I'm a nerd.
It's sort of like the dinosaur style I often have. I like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am a dinosaur, but I also like dinosaurs, so that's why I stick with it.
You like being a dapper one.
Right, exactly. So, Vishanti, is there anything that you would like to say as any kind of final statement about this? Anything that we didn't really touch on that you think you'd like people to know? Anything like that?
I would say that I was a pretty tough sell to coming out of it, but I mean, honestly, if I can do it being as stubborn as I am, then pretty much anyone can, because I had all the knowledge. I was just stubborn and in denial about it. I just didn't want to let go that literalist thing because I was like, oh no, this threatens my entire sense of self. And you don't have to be a literalist if you're a Christian. You don't have to be.
That's true.
And basing your entire Christian identity on how literal everything is, and that's dangerous, man. Don't do that to yourself. Yeah. You don't have to leave the entire faith just because one thing got proven wrong.
We have one final question. This is from NA. As a young Earth creationist, were you familiar with the Hebrew concept of the rakia being a solid dome? And for those of you who might not know, that is the word that is translated as firmament in most translations into English of the Bible.
I didn't start running into that stuff until I accidentally discovered Rob Skiba. And he was into he was into the Messianic movement.
Isn't it now the late Rob Skiba?
Not Jewish. And he was big into biblical literalism, but also flat earth, because honestly, you can't avoid it. And it's hysterical to me that Kent Hovind thinks that flat earthers are just so super wrong, but they take the Bible more literally than he does.
Yeah, it's true. They're more consistent in terms of their exegetical method than he is by a lot. Which
So
is it's yeah. Also,
I would pay to see him debate a flat earther. I
Well-
would pay cash money for that.
as far as I know, he's said that he doesn't want to debate flat earthers, but he does have one video out there somewhere, where he tried to like show why the flat earth is dumb, and it's so bad. He basically gives no arguments other than just saying, well, this is silly. I'm like, I mean, yeah, it is, Kent, but like, you're not going to convince anyone by saying it's silly. Everyone.
The funny thing is that he has to defend his ideas with science. He can't use the Bible.
Oh yeah, and the thing is,
that's
he
the
can't.
funny part.
He's completely incompetent at it. And the thing is, sometimes he uses flat Earth arguments like, "Oh, you think you can make a parallax measure to a distant star while the Earth is traveling at this many miles an hour around the galaxy, and the galaxy is flying through space at this many?" And the answer is like, "Yes, Kent," because those are all things that can be accounted for.
Yeah, the inconsistency. But to answer the question more, I guess, more specifically, is the idea of Rekia being solidome. That wasn't something that even Kent Hovind knew, because again, he doesn't know Hebrew, so he wouldn't be teaching about that. And it wasn't until I found Rav Skiba that he tried to make it all work. And I remember finding one of his videos just because I love to learn about esoteric things, even if I don't believe them. And I found a video on the Nephilim, and then I found him, and he was talking about Nephilim in the Bible and how the Nephilim influenced human culture and how women style their hair where it comes up really high on their head, and that's like the elongated skulls of the Nephilim.
All of this from the virtually nothing about the Nephilim that's actually in the Bible.
And I'm like, you have a problem with the way Western women wear their hair, and you think that means that giant / possibly demon human hybrid giants lived. And then he made a comment about flat earth, and I was like, he's got to be joking. No.
Nope, not a little bit. Not even
a little.
Now, didn't Rob Skiba die of COVID-19 recently? Is that him?
He did.
Okay.
He did.
Because
it was very fake to him, and the vaccine was evil, mark of the beast, Satan, and yeah, don't be like that guy.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to die of a preventable disease that you could have just not died of.
If all he had done was not be such a putz about it, he might still be alive today, and his family would still have him around. So that's a huge loss for them just because he was being an idiot.
Yeah. Go get your vaccines.
Yep. Let's see. One person asked me, what's the Jewish view of original sin? We don't believe in original sin.
Interestingly, it's not even a universal Christian concept. There are a number of Christian groups that don't really have a doctrine of original sin.
Yeah.
It's actually it kind of starts in Catholicism as the idea that like, oh, well, maybe this fall of Adam means that you are in some way guilty for the sins that he committed. And the outside of groups that descend from that tradition, a more broad idea in Christianity is that there's some kind of curse in the broad sense on the world and humanity in general. So there is a problem, but you are not in particular guilty for things that you didn't do as a person.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's antithetical to basically everything in Judaism, no matter what branch you follow. Like, you're responsible for your actions only. And funny enough, there's a prophet named Ezekiel who went into great detail talking about how if you're a super righteous person, but your dad's a piece of crap, you're not going to be held liable for his crappiness. And if he's super righteous and you're crappy, you don't get to draft off his goodness.
Okay, we have a question from Ink Boy. Which superhero do you like the most? And also,
Doctor Strange.
Fair enough. Also, why not cosplay as a super villain, which I think you have.
I have cosplayed as a super. I did cosplay as a supervillain technically. Yeah. I have a Scarlet Witch crown, so
there you
technically.
Well, Scarlet Witch is sort of like both. It goes back and forth a little bit.
It's a little ambiguous, but yeah, she was definitely the antagonist and had some very villainy things going on in that last Doctor Strange movie.
And Valkyrie Vision for $1.99 says, like, comment, and share, guys, which I do agree with. Yes, please do. It helps out a lot. So I think at this point, I am going to go ahead and give some, like, channel news stuff, like what's coming up, what you can expect in the next few weeks. And then we're going to be out of here. And I'll make sure that if Vishanti has anything she wants to plug, that she gets a chance.
Coyote says, be like Amy Jill Levine. She's a Jew who teaches New Testament, Hebrew lit at Vanderbilt. Yes, I actually have the Jewish annotated New Testament that she contributed in very large part to, and it is super good. I still have my Christian NASB study Bible. I still have all my notes. I just, have reoriented how I think about things. So one of my favorite rabbinic sayings is, wise is the man who learns from everyone. And I still do that. I don't just automatically disqualify someone just because they're not Jewish or whatnot. They may have excellent work. So if someone comes out like, DJ Hammurabi, when he's talking about ancient Near Eastern culture, if he's talking about ancient Hebrew text, I listen to him because he knows his stuff. He's done the research. He's looked at the manuscripts. So I learn from that guy just as much as I do from someone like Amy Jill.
On its own, someone's religious affiliation is not a good indicator of the quality of their work.
Right. It's only if your outlook is making your work biased.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that definitely happens, but it also happens on basically every side.
Yeah.
I can't count the number of really bad atheist takes I've seen on the New Testament.
That's for a whole other discussion.
It's actually a discussion I've had before. That's a thing that's been on this channel. Is atheists getting things badly wrong about religious history. So let's see. On the 26th, currently the plan is Jackson with Jackson. I have confirmed with Jackson. I will be doing so again to make sure that everything is on the up and up for that. That will be at 6 p.m. Pacific. That is 9 p.m. Eastern. Then on Thursday, the 28th, we should be getting the first of two videos in which I go through Cindy Lincoln's video about stratigraphy. In case you guys don't know, I already had a discussion with her and one of her friends over on Cheshire Vic's channel about stratigraphy. So if you want to see sort of a preamble to the kind of thing I'm going to be talking about then, you can watch that on her channel. Discussion. It wasn't really a debate, right? Like, we didn't have a formal thing. It was just chatting. That right there was actually conducted shortly after I had recorded those videos. So, basically, for me, those videos came out before this discussion, but for everyone else, it was months apart, with the discussion coming first.
She was the one that I was going back and forth with over Ron Wyatt, because she is
there you go.
super invested in Ron Wyatt being totally correct, you guys.
Yep, she is. She is a big Ron Wyatt fan.
Every time that I ask her for evidence, she just says, well, this guy says it. I'm like, cool, where's his photos?
Right.
Well, they haven't released it. And it was the doctor. And I'm like, what does a medical doctor, have to say about archaeology? Like, that is not relevant.
Yeah.
Why is his word without documentation worth anything? Like, and then the girl that said, oh, she has photos. Release them.
Right. Let's see them then.
Stop making excuses and put them out there, because if you actually had them, you would have put them out by now, because you would have wanted to prove your whole thing right. And this whole like, well, I didn't want to, it's just an excuse. You don't have anything. Next.
Well, Dr. Osiris real quick says, how's Cindy doing now? I've been out of the loop for a few months due to mental health issues. So right now, she is working on a way to try to get Steve Lynn to pay the money that I think somewhere around $12,000 that he owes her for damages to her property. As far as I know, Steve Lynn is now no longer associated with Kent Hovind. So at the very least, he's no longer being essentially hidden from the sheriffs on Kent Hovind's property. But I think that also might now mean that we're not sure exactly where he is.
Oh, spicy.
And she is also waiting on the retrial for Kent Hovind, because he has appealed and requested a jury trial, which is, I mean, that's his legal right. He's every right to do so, and I don't really begrudge him doing so, because, I mean, I might do the same thing if I were in his shoes, if I were, say, not actually guilty, or honestly, even if I were, might as well chance it, right?
I would not want to be the jury when they have to listen to the tape.
Oh my goodness, that tape is hard to listen to.
So,
You know they will.
and you know they will, unless there is some chicanery with excluding that from evidence. But honestly, you might be digging yourself into a hole in that one, buddy.
Yeah. Now, I do want to point
Well,
out that my information that Steve Lynn is gone is currently what I would say is third hand, although I also haven't seen him in any videos recently. But then again, I don't really watch many of Kent's recent videos because Kent's new stuff is really boring. It's really, really boring.
It is very boring.
Yeah. His old stuff is, it's like fascinating in the same way that like watching The Room with Tommy Wiseau is. It's like, how did this occur? How did this come about? Why is this a thing that exists, right? These are questions you ask yourself.
Oh, Tommy Wiseau.
Whereas his new stuff is like watching like the latest Michael Bay explosion. It's like, okay, I mean, there's a million of these and they're all the same. And if you guys don't get those film references, you should go look up both Michael Bay and Tommy Wiseau. For very different reasons.
Yes, for very different reasons.
I don't currently have anything scheduled for the 30th, but I'm sure I will come up with something for the 30th. That's next Saturday. And then Tuesday the 2nd is going to be a Kent with Bent, is the plan. Let's see. Wednesday the 27th should be a Power Rangers Jungle Beasts stream on my Top Hats Off channel. That'll be, I think, episode 6, I want to say.
Are you going to do a Kent with Bent, like, spin on the black phone? The Kent phone?
Oh, yeah, that could be
fun. Find a way to make that work?
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Yeah, I'll see what I can do with that. I'll take a look at stuff like promotional art and movie posters and whatnot, see what I can do to work that in. Because like the mask has to be there, but I don't know where then to put Kent. Because I can't put him behind the mask because Ken Hovind wearing the black phone mask is just basically the same as Ethan Hawke wearing the black phone mask in a still picture.
Well, there's the full mask, and then there's just the bottom where it's
just
that
yeah.
grin, you know?
Okay, that could work. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Also, I have finished the art and the with help the World Anvil upload for the next Speculative Evolution video. So I'm hoping to have that recorded early next week, and then I am thinking about actually releasing it outside of the normal release schedule. And that's for a couple reasons. One is I think it might end up being fairly short for most of those, and two, they don't do all that well, and quite frankly, I'd rather just have one of the videos that I know will perform about, at least on average, as my Thursday regular video. So, yeah, if you're into the Speculative Evolution project, that should hopefully be out this week or next week, but I don't think it'll be a Thursday premiere. I think I'll premiere it on like a Wednesday or a Friday or something. So stay tuned for that.
Chad is suggesting the mask plus the Hawaiian shirt that he always wears.
Yeah, like I could just if I do the half mask, what I'll probably do is just cut out the half mask and then put it over like a full body Kent. Well, not full body, but like maybe like bust Kent Hovind. All right, guys. Well, thank you.
I don't think the side chat knows that I actually painted a replica mask from the Black Phone.
I don't think they. Well, how would they know?
Hey, chat. Guess what? I had a 3D printed Black Phone mask, and I painted it and wore it to one of the screenings. So
it looks pretty cool.
Yeah. It's gross.
Yeah, which is appropriate.
It's appropriate.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. Vishanti, thank you very much. I'm sorry that our original plans for this episode got moved around for very unfortunate circumstances, but I'm glad that we finally got it. I think it was a good one, and I hope everyone else likes it. Guys, if you haven't seen my previous Leaving Young Earth Creationism, I don't even know how many I've done it, but it's a lot. Feel free to check them out. Everyone has their own story, and I think each of them is interesting in its own way. So,
and there's plenty of people who are probably in the audience either now or in the future. Hello, future people. You don't have to abandon whatever religious tradition you're in just because you're not a young earth creationist. So, I personally happen to leave and go to Judaism, but that doesn't have to be you. There's plenty of Christians out there who are not any less of a Christian because they accept the scientific model. Like, you have to make your religion meaningful to you. So hopefully it's not a threat that there are so many people coming out of this. And I would just say, like, it's fine. You can do it. Give it a shot. It's not gonna upend your entire world unless you let it. So if
some
you
of those
decide,
Christians are on my channel frequently.
some of those Christians, are on your channel. And if you decide you want to deconvert or deconstruct, cool, go for it. There's a lot of us out here that have been doing that work and are still doing it. If you decide you just want to trim that part of your practice out, there's other people out here as well that have done that. So you're not alone.
All right, guys. Well, with that, we're going to go over to the end credits. And I hope that I see all of you on Tuesday for Jackson with Jackson.
Woohoo!
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Bent Hovind, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Yepetis, Mabdy Babdy, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if the annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.